Forget everything you've learned about history. Textbooks are an illusion. We're about to reveal 6 facts that science has fought to keep hidden, secrets they can no longer suppress. Believe it or not, we have discovered an actual nuclear reactor that is thousands of years old. Could anything be more shocking? How about an iron hammer used during the age of the dinosaurs? We've unearthed complex nanotechnology from the permafrost and found traces of spacecraft buried in the desert sands. But that is only the beginning. The most terrifying secret is hidden right beneath your feet. Do you believe the Earth is a paradise for humanity? You're wrong. We've found evidence suggesting that our planet is actually a massive abandoned strip mine. We are living on a dead world that was completely stripped of its resources long before we arrived. Are you ready to face the horrifying truth and see the true face of the Earth? Let's dive in. The sand-covered secrets of the exclusion zone hide things that were never meant to be found. As the wind blows back the dust, it reveals a sight that terrifies the scientific community. Protruding from the dunes is a massive, riveted iron cylinder. Its nose is buried deep in the earth, while its tail, fitted with engines, points toward the sky, like a rocket frozen in time just before takeoff. This is the object from those leaked photos that was scrubbed from the internet. Scholars call it a ritual pillar, but any mechanical engineer will tell you that's nonsense. What we're looking at isn't stone. It's a technical marvel, something truly otherworldly. Chemists were stunned to find that despite being buried for 12,000 years, the hull doesn't have a single speck of rust. It shines as if it were brand new. When engineers inspected the tail section, they discovered a fuel delivery system strikingly similar to modern space tech, along with nozzles containing thousands of tiny cooling tubes. A component this complex could only have been manufactured in a vacuum. The most terrifying part is the design. Perfectly smooth, aerodynamic curves engineered specifically to break the sound barrier. Ancient priests wouldn't need to understand air resistance for their prayers. Those shapes were built to reach the stars. Just thinking about what this truly is sends chills down your spine. This isn't a temple. It's an escape pod, a technological ark for those who saw the Great Flood coming and tried to flee a doomed planet. Apparently, something went wrong. The launch button was never pressed, the crew perished, and the rocket remained behind as a lasting monument to a failed escape. But any ship without a pilot is just a pile of scrap metal. And the most chilling part? We discovered the brain of this machine inside this very box. Had the rocket remained buried in the sand, its computer might have ended up lost in the ocean. In the early 20th century, near the island of Antikythera, divers accidentally pulled a strange green stone from the seafloor. For years, this object sat in a museum like a useless trinket until it dried out and cracked open, revealing a terrifying piece of engineering. Inside that stone was a complex mechanism made of dozens of bronze gears, dials, and pointers. When scientists analyzed the find using high-powered X-rays, they were shaken to their core. Each gear was crafted with such incredible precision that it would have been impossible to achieve by hand, even with a file. The teeth of the wheels were perfectly uniform, as if they had been cut by a laser or a high-precision machine. To create such a mechanism, the makers would have needed more than just simple magnifying glasses. They would have required powerful microscopes and tools finer than a human hair. According to historical records, such technology simply didn't exist at the time. But the biggest secret lies in the device's internal design. Hidden inside is a component that engineers call a differential. To put it simply, this is the same mechanism that allows car wheels to rotate at different speeds when turning, the very heart of every modern automobile. Even though official records claim this technology wasn't invented for another 1,500 years, the ancient Greeks, who supposedly only believed in myths, already possessed a device more complex than any Swiss watch. Historians remain skeptical, claiming this was just a simple calendar for tracking planting seasons, but that theory doesn't hold up. This computer did more than just count days. It tracked the positions of planets that weren't even supposed to have been discovered yet. Perhaps it was a navigator for time travel, or even a control panel for the weapons that wiped out the previous civilization. But any computer, whether made of iron or plastic, is useless without a power source, without a battery. And it seems our ancestors knew how to harness energy in ways we still don't understand. Traces of this extraordinary energy lead to the Oklo mines in Africa. In the 1970s, physicists noticed something strange in the uranium ore. Analysis showed a missing key isotope required for nuclear fission. This suggested that the uranium had been processed by someone before us, compressed in a massive furnace. Furthermore, the rocks contain traces of hazardous waste, byproducts that are created exclusively by nuclear power plants. Scientists immediately labeled it a natural reactor, claiming the uranium simply gathered on its own, was flooded by water, and began a chain reaction. However, this theory falls apart under scrutiny. For a reactor to operate without exploding, it requires perfectly pure water and constant control. Yet, at Oklo, the process ran flawlessly for hundreds of thousands of years. The reactor never sputtered or failed, as if an invisible force was regulating it, ensuring a steady flow of energy. Most surprisingly, the radioactive waste was buried in stone tombs to prevent environmental contamination, exactly how nuclear specialists handle waste today. This wasn't just a fluke. Nature doesn't build nuclear power plants. We are standing on the ruins of a massive ancient power station. 2 billion years ago, turbines were spinning here, and the brilliant light they radiated has since vanished without a trace. The evidence points to one conclusion: we are living on a junk heap. We didn't discover nuclear energy, we simply stumbled upon the blueprints of those who inhabited this planet long before us. And perhaps it was this very energy that led to their downfall. If they had electricity, then their engines must have survived somewhere too. In Egypt, a strange artifact was discovered that still leaves engineers baffled to this day. In the Cairo Museum, among countless other exhibits, sits an object known as the Sabu disc. It's a stone dish with folded edges and a central hub. Some scholars claim it's just a vase or a lamp, but how do you pour oil into a bowl with a hole right in the middle? Any mechanical engineer will tell you the same thing. The shape of this disc perfectly matches a part from a high-powered pump. It is physically impossible to carve such thin, curved blades out of brittle metasilt by hand. The stone is simply too fragile. It crumbles like a dry cracker if you hit it with a hammer. To cut a shape like this, you would need a high-speed rotating lathe and a diamond-tipped cutter. However, the most fascinating part comes when you run an experiment. If you spin a replica of the disc, it acts as a powerful turbine, efficiently moving water or air. The shape of the blades is optimized for performance, not for aesthetics. This isn't just pottery, it's a fossilized component of a complex machine. It was likely a propeller for an ancient aircraft, or a pump that circulated water for a reactor. Primitive people must have found the original metal part, and though they couldn't understand its purpose, they assumed it was something divine. They painstakingly carved this stone copy to be buried with their king. It's a classic cargo cult, the worship of objects. But looking at this model, one question remains. Who created the original? Who possessed the tools to cut through stone as if it were butter? We take you back to June 1936, in the state of Texas, where the sweltering sun and oppressive humidity were everywhere. A vacationing family, Max Hahn and his wife Emma, headed out for a walk along the banks of Red Creek, looking for some relief from the heat. The air was still, broken only by the crunch of gravel and the steady buzz of cicadas. On this ordinary weekend, no one could have predicted that a chance discovery would soon rewrite history. Emma's eye caught a strange fragment of rock on a ledge. It stood out from the surrounding stones, a piece of grey limestone with what looked like a wooden handle sticking out of it. Driven by curiosity, the couple decided to take the rock home. For more than 10 years, the artifact sat around their house, sometimes on a shelf, sometimes in the garage, even serving as a doorstop. But one day their son, overcome by curiosity, grabbed a hammer and chisel, determined to see what was hidden inside. With one sharp strike, the rock split open, and that sound, without exaggeration, split the world of official science in two. When the limestone crust fell away, it revealed an object that left everyone speechless. Inside the rock was a hammer. A real hammer, with an iron head and the remains of a wooden handle. At first, you might think someone simply lost their tool a century ago and it got buried in the mud. But when professional geologists looked at the find, their faces went pale. Their eyes caught what the tourists had missed. The rock encasing the hammer belonged to an ancient layer known as the Edwards Formation. To give you an idea of how devastating this is for modern textbooks, consider the age of that rock. 140 million years. Think about that number. That's the early Cretaceous period. At that time, not only were there no humans, but even the Tyrannosaurus rex hadn't appeared yet. It was the age of giant diplodocus and pterodactyls. Our distant ancestors were nothing more than small, rat-like creatures hiding in burrows. And yet, in this prehistoric world, someone drops an iron hammer into the wet silt. Time freezes, the silt turns to stone, and an impossible piece of evidence is buried for millions of years. Of course, skeptics cried, "It's a hoax, a miner's prank." But laboratory tests tore their arguments apart. The smoking gun was the handle. It had completely turned into coal. Over 140 million years, the wood didn't rot or crumble. Instead, it underwent a complex fossilization process, transforming into coal. The wood became stone and coal simultaneously. Replicating something like this at home is physically impossible. You can't turn a piece of wood into coal inside a solid rock in just a few years. That requires the colossal pressure of the Earth's layers, a total lack of oxygen, and most importantly, millions of years. This settles the debate once and for all. The hammer ended up in the rock while it was still a soft, muddy substance beneath the feet of dinosaurs. But the surprises were just beginning. To examine the metal head, scientists cut off a small sample and sent it to one of the world's leading laboratories. The results stunned metallurgists. Ordinary iron found on Earth always contains impurities, especially carbon. Carbon is what gives iron its hardness, turning it into steel, but it's also what causes corrosion. In this ancient hammer, there was no carbon at all, 0%. It was chemically pure iron, 96.6% iron, with the rest being chlorine and sulfur. Modern science can only produce metal like this in high-tech vacuum furnaces using powerful magnetic fields. The idea that a simple blacksmith at an anvil could achieve this is unthinkable. This is a technology that, in some ways, surpasses our own. And here is the final fact. We all know what happens to iron when it's left outside. Rain and humidity quickly turn it into a pile of red dust. This hammer sat in the ground for over 100 million years. It was unearthed, chipped out of the rock, and has been sitting on a shelf, exposed to the air for nearly a century. And the most shocking part? There isn't a single sign of rust. It shines as if it were bought at the store just yesterday. Analysis revealed that the chlorine atoms in the metal formed a unique protective film at the molecular level. The owner of this tool possessed the secret to everlasting iron. Today, we spend billions of dollars fighting corrosion, yet a craftsman from the age of dinosaurs seemingly solved that problem with ease. So, who owned this object? Close your eyes and imagine. A sweltering afternoon in the Cretaceous period. A creature moves along the ocean shore. It has 2 arms, 2 legs, and an intelligence much like our own. It's carrying this hammer, perhaps repairing a ship or building a home. Suddenly, the roar of a massive predator echoes in the distance, or the ground begins to shake. In a desperate scramble for survival, the creature flees, dropping the tool into the thick, sticky mud. And there the hammer remained, buried for eons. A message sent from the depths of time. Who was this being? Perhaps a time traveler? Or is it possible that our understanding of Earth's true history is just full of holes? There is a theory that civilizations on Earth follow a cyclical pattern. We build cities, create the internet, and conquer space, only for a global catastrophe to eventually wipe us out. Over millions of years, nature ruthlessly grinds our skyscrapers into dust, making room for new, intelligent beings to start the journey all over again, from scratch. Perhaps this hammer is all that's left of them, of a humanity that preceded us, living either before the dinosaurs or alongside them. They were likely just like us. They worked, they built homes, and they loved their children. And yet, of all their power and greatness, only this small, rust-proof hammer remains. It's a chilling thought. If they could vanish, despite being so advanced and intelligent, then what will happen to us? This hammer is a cold, hard piece of evidence that you can hold in your hand. Sometimes, the most shocking traces of high technology are hidden in places where the naked eye can't see them, in a world smaller than a grain of sand. To find the ultimate proof of ancient super-civilizations, we have to put down the shovels and pick up a high-powered electron microscope. Our story takes us to the harsh landscapes of the Ural Mountains in 1991. Deep in the remote taiga, a place reachable only by helicopter, a group of geologists was searching for gold. They were drilling through the permafrost and sifting through tons of sediment in the Narada and Kozim rivers, hoping to find gold flakes in their pans. But that year they discovered something that made them forget all about gold. As they extracted soil samples from deep underground, strange, shiny objects began to emerge from the sand. At first, no one paid them much attention, assuming they were just ordinary trash. They thought it might be debris from an old rocket or a part from a broken bulldozer, especially since there was a testing range nearby. But the deeper the geologists dug, the more of these mysterious parts appeared. There were thousands of them, scattered throughout the soil. Later they realized something shocking. The objects were buried at a depth of 30 to 40 feet in a layer of permafrost that had remained untouched for over 100,000 years. No modern equipment, not a bulldozer or a drill, could have driven such fragile items into ground as hard as solid rock. Only one terrifying conclusion remained. These objects entered the Earth during an era when mammoths and woolly rhinos still roamed the Ural Mountains. The geologists sent the samples to a lab for analysis. When the specialists looked at the shiny objects under a microscope, the room went silent. These weren't random fragments, they were perfectly formed coils and springs. Their sizes were mind-blowing. The largest were about an inch long, while the smallest were hundreds of times thinner than a human hair, measured in nanometers. Imagine a spring, invisible to the naked eye, yet wound with incredible precision, coil by coil, following the proportions of the golden ratio. Nature isn't capable of this. Nature creates chaos, crystals and fractals, but it never gives birth to perfect industrial springs made of pure metal. This was clearly the work of intelligence, the product of advanced engineering. Creating a microscopic part like this is barely possible even today, in the 21st century, and only with massive effort. It requires sterile, clean rooms, free of even the tiniest dust particles, powerful computers, and robotic manipulators. For work this delicate, human hands are far too clumsy. It would be like trying to repair a wristwatch while wearing boxing gloves, only 1,000,000 times more difficult. The chemical analysis became the final argument against the skeptics. When scientists decided to test the composition of the spirals, the results were staggering. The larger coils were made of copper, but the microscopic ones were composed of rare metals like tungsten and molybdenum. To put this into perspective, tungsten is the most heat-resistant metal on Earth. Melting it requires temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees. That's hotter than the surface of some stars and twice as hot as volcanic lava. For comparison, a standard campfire only reaches about 700 degrees, which wouldn't even come close to melting tungsten, even in a professional forge. Working with such a metal requires specialized electric furnaces, vacuum chambers, and high-tech equipment. Now try to picture this. 100,000 years ago, in the wild taiga, surrounded by snow and mammoths, someone was melting tungsten on an industrial scale. They were drawing it into threads thinner than a human hair and winding them into perfect nano-spirals. But why? These weren't jewelry. You couldn't even see them, let alone wear them. These were technical components, parts of something massive and incredibly complex. When scientists realized the sheer scale of the discovery, they were gripped by true terror. These spirals weren't isolated finds. They were appearing by the thousands, pointing to a colossal industrial operation. This wasn't the work of a lone hobbyist, but the product of massive factories and an advanced industry that has been completely erased from our history. Hypotheses began to emerge, each more haunting than the last. Some physicists were convinced they were looking at smart dust, billions of microscopic nanobots. Imagine a swarm of invisible flying machines capable of surveillance and transmitting data. Perhaps we've stumbled upon the remains of an ancient internet, one that didn't rely on wires, but was distributed right through the atmosphere. Some believe these are components of a climate weapon, antennas designed to control the weather. According to this theory, ancient civilizations manipulated the environment by dispersing these spirals into the atmosphere. Others suggest they are parts of the engines that powered Vimanas, the legendary flying chariots of the gods. Looking at these discoveries, we realize just how limited our understanding of the world truly is. We take pride in our computers, viewing them as the pinnacle of progress. Yet 100,000 years ago, someone was mastering technology at the atomic level, far beyond our current reach. Someone once covered this planet in a layer of smart machines that over time decayed into the dust now found in mountain streams. The most terrifying part of this story is the realization that our entire planet has become a massive graveyard of forgotten technology. We aren't walking on soil, we are walking on the rust of ancient robots. We drink water flowing through channels cut through the charred microchips of the gods, never realizing the true meaning of what we see. We call these things fossils, but in reality, they are the discarded remains of a super-civilization that existed long before us. If a society that mastered nanotechnology and the atom could vanish without a trace, what fate awaits us and our primitive gadgets? These tiny springs are a vivid symbol that we are not the only inhabitants of this planet, and most likely, not the last. Look at the smartphone in your hand right now. Look at your walls, your streets. Do you really think this is the pinnacle of human achievement? Do you believe our world will last forever? You're mistaken. Those who came before us thought the exact same thing. They took pride in their machines and believed in their own eternity. But look at what remains: a rusty hammer in a rock, a wire coil in the mud, and radioactive uranium. That is their entire legacy. That was their end. We are simply the next link in this chain. Time doesn't move in a straight line, it moves in a circle that is slowly closing. We are repeating the sins of our ancestors, bringing ourselves closer to our own finale. If you're ready to face the truth about our world, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the like button so more people can see this video before it's too late. And share your thoughts in the comments. Can we break this cycle? Or are we destined to become just another mysterious find for future archaeologists? The choice is yours.